One of my mentors offered me a bit of advice that time is your most valuable asset. I want to thank you for spending your time to learn about something that could change your life and your business. Hi, I'm Vistage Chair Joe White, and I work out of the Denver metro area with high-performing business leaders. Sometimes these business leaders feel isolated. Sometimes they feel stuck in the weeds and just want an outside perspective. They want to be pushed both personally and professionally. Over the next hour, you're going to hear me and a world-class speaker, AmyK Hutchens, discuss different topics, but the main topic we're going to discuss is having those tough conversations within the workforce. 80% of executives resist leading a conversation that they dread. Here is the good news. Having just one tough conversation can lead to better performing and more empathetic teams. We're also going to hear from members of my Vistage team, and they're going to tell you the impact Vistage has had on their leadership, both personally and professionally, how we work as a team to get to the heart of the issues and to help each other through the business challenges and opportunities, and the impact of private executive coaching and how executives manage their time, and what the Vistage culture is all about. It really is a win-win situation. I want to thank you for joining us today, and please enjoy the conversations with AmyK and my members of my Vistage team. Good afternoon, and welcome to this week's edition of the People Progressing podcast. And I am really, really excited. We're just having a great conversation with AmyK Hutchens, and this is going to be a powerful show. I'm really excited about getting into this. So, AmyK, thanks for coming on. And this is what I always start with: is where did you grow up? What did you like to do as a kid? What are some influences that happened in your life that kind of got you to where you are now?
Joe, I was super blessed. Let me start there. So, and I understand that not everybody gets a whole lot of control over the cards that you're dealt. And I was dealt some pretty good ones. So I grew up in Washington, D.C. I was, as they say, I was inside the Beltway. My dad worked for the government. My mom worked for Wesley Theological Seminary after working for the YMCA. So I grew up with go-getter parents who were very well-read and intellectually curious. And I grew up in a household where there were fires in the winter and we would curl up and we would talk about books. And there was a lot of love in that household. And so I was really blessed growing up. I have two older brothers. So I was the youngest by 6 years, and never spoiled. That's my story, never spoiled. And it was one of those times where you'll appreciate this with your sports background, because I grew up in a sports family. So I grew up in a day where we played Kiwanis baseball in all the summer leagues, and it was way before Title IX. But my dad was so cool and such a great coach of my brothers that even though I couldn't play as a girl, he was like, you're going to keep score and you're going to keep the books and we're going to get you totally involved. And so I come from just this amazing sports family. So my brothers played all through high school, and then they played in college, and I've got Division I nieces and nephews, and my brother coached professionally down in Australia. And so we were just this really fun, loving sports family, and you got a lot of lessons from that. And then my first job was a school teacher. I was an elementary school teacher for 9 years, loved every minute of the kids, a little less of the politics around it in the school system. But I also taught overseas in our international school system. So if you were a foreign passport holder for Coca-Cola or Nike or one of those large organizations and you had kids that needed to go to school, that's where I was playing. And then I went corporate, became a sales trainer, became a leadership trainer, started my own company 23 years ago. Wow. So I've been doing leadership, sales, and executive leadership and self-leadership development for 23 years, and I still love it. And I still consider myself to be super blessed.
Yeah, it's because you're living in your purpose there with your servant's heart. Everything you've done so far is always helping, teaching, coaching someone else.
So when I was little, I would play, before it was uncool, but when I was super little, I would play school with my imaginary students. Yeah. And it was in my heart to teach. And so even though people are like, oh my gosh, would you ever have expected to be a speaker on stage? I would have said no, because I was shy as a kid. But all of it's teaching. So whether it was an elementary school classroom or now I get blessed with like 5,000 people in a convention center, I'm still teaching and I love it.
Yeah. And that's what I love about what you've done. But I want to dive into this a little bit, AmyK, because one of the things that really fascinates me is this. You were a teacher, and then you taught overseas and everything else. What propelled you to say, I'm gonna take a leap here. I'm gonna take a risk and kind of, because that's kind of a comfortable living. It's a living that you're doing because you love it. It's got, an income coming in and all the things that it has. What was it that gave you the ability or the mindset to say, I'm going to leave that behind and I'm going to jump into this next thing?
I think there's a couple things at play. I think that one, it seems like less of a risk when I tell you that the thread is teaching. So it was sort of okay, I can be a teacher here in the United States. I can be a teacher in Shanghai, China. So while yes, there's a risk of moving 16,000 miles across the globe, it's still that comfort zone of this is what I'm called to do. And that's the second thing. To me, it's always been this inkling, this inner knowing, a soul calling of then playing bigger. Like, what's the next big thing for impact? Okay. What's the next big thing for me to serve, to fulfill my potential and my capacity? It's not leaving my gifts behind. If anything, it's taking my strengths and saying, okay, what do you do and what do you not do? I have tried things that I am not very good at. Like, I've tried learning how to play the guitar. Never going to happen, right? I know my limitations, but every nuance that I've done is just an expanded capacity of what talents and gifts I was given and really learning how to hone that. And again, if I'm a speaker now on stage showing up at your event, I am still relying on that inner gift and talent that I was given, which was to teach, to present, to simplify tough concepts. Now I've expanded it. I've expanded into self-leadership and communication skills, which I wasn't doing 25, 30 years ago. So that's all evolved. But it's been kind of a natural progression and a soul calling.
Yeah, and you're so good at it. And I know this too, that you do speaking for different groups and so forth too. You are a Vistage speaker. How many groups of Vistage groups do you speak to on a yearly basis?
Well, it's changed. So I've done over 2,600 group presentations in my career with Vistage.
Wow.
And I've done their large executive summits as well, which is what I do now. And what you learn from very sophisticated and strong, capable leaders around the globe is how to refine your message, be super practical, be succinct, have things that are proven, and to get rid of the BS. And so again, you think about 2,600 presentations, sometimes 500 people in the room, sometimes 7, but they're all amazing leaders helping me to get better so that I can serve them more effectively.
Yeah. And so you were a member of Vistage for a long time too. Why don't you explain your experience a little bit with Vistage and the power of a peer advisory group?
Well, all right. So I joke that I bleed teal, which is Vistage's logo color, because I'm a huge fan. And part of the reason that I'm a fan is it's one of the best models for exposing yourself to a diverse group of people in the way that they think, a diverse group of experiences, and to really expand the optics for how you're going to solve your own problems. So as a member, what I loved is we get together for what we call the executive session, where it's like somebody's in the hot seat and you're problem solving. And it really goes back. So this is the geeky part of me, Joe, is the geeky part. Where else can you put 8 to 12 brilliant minds to focus on one single question with you in the hot seat? And that is, what are you missing? What are you missing as you go to make this decision? And so I would sit there and I would be like, okay, here's my situation. And then I would pose to the group, what am I missing? Like, tell me what I'm not considering. Tell me what I'm not thinking is an unintended consequence. Who am I leaving out of this equation? And you've got 10, 12 other minds in the room. They're all going to bring this incredible perspective to expand your own so that you leave as this bigger, better, bolder leader, making bigger, better, bolder decisions to go forward. And I loved that. I loved that aspect of Vistage.
And I tell people all the time too, in my Vistage team, you're going to get value from it, but you're also going to give value to it.
Yeah.
How much did you enjoy giving value to others in the meetings?
All right, Joe. I'm a big fan of what I call the helper's high.
Yeah.
There's some, we're wired. So as humans, we at a DNA, a biological, and a neuropsych level, for most of us, we get lit up knowing that we were helpful to somebody else. It's what makes generosity so easy for us, is because we just feel good about ourselves when we help somebody else. And every Vistage meeting, that's what you get to do. And it doesn't mean that you go in with the whole, I'm the arrogant, I'm going to help you. No, it's that beautiful sense of, if this is my place to contribute and serve today, I will do so. If I have something to offer Joe, I will do it. And if Joe has something to offer me, I will be a generous receiver. And that was something that Vistage taught me early on. Was a lot of times we think that generosity is outward. Generosity can be in, hey, I'm going to be humble enough. I'm going to be open or vulnerable enough to be a generous receiver today. And so to me, Vistage was worth its weight in gold.
Yeah. This is kind of interesting topic. It's kind of, I want to keep going here a little bit. What value did you feel like you got from being in part of a Vistage team or Vistage group?
The ability to expand my capacity to make an impact. So and this is something that I just core believe in, that every day as a leader, at home, at work, as a leader, your ability to play full out and better every day is being in the practice of self-leadership. And Vistage is just that beautiful monthly reminder. Plus, if you're lucky enough to be in a group with coaching with your chair, you're getting that as well. And so you're getting these little drips of, we're going to hold the bar high. We're going to raise expectations for you to play full out. And that doesn't mean an undue amount of pressure. It just means that we're going to be a support system for you to play full out. So it's kind of like, if you're on the field, you're going to be the best quarterback that you can be, or you're going to be the best pitcher or the best hitter. Whatever position you're playing, you're going to play full out and fully committed. And Vistage is just a great support system to do it.
Yeah. And I want to go back to when you started your business.
Yeah.
Your own business. Is that when you joined Vistage, or was it a couple of years after you started it? Or yeah. When did you join Vistage in that process, and how much did it help you grow?
I joined Vistage. Wow, I haven't been asked this in a while. Let me go back and do the math, because I'm not good at these numbers. I'm trying to think. I was 3 years into my business when I joined Vistage, maybe 2.5. And I was a Vistage member for 8 years. And in that time I scaled, like exponential growth, but I didn't do it on my own. And the first couple of years were a super big struggle, because I didn't know what I didn't know. And I didn't have anybody around me to tell me what I didn't know.
Right. Yeah. So you said it, the individual coaching, really the team camaraderie, the team coaching, and then the networking, and it's a threefold approach I look at, just to help people grow and keep progressing as leaders and for their business.
Yeah. And I always appreciated that in my group, the professional was as important as the personal. And not every group is like that, but for my group, it was.
Yeah, mine too. I tell people all the time, I call mine a team.
Yeah.
It's called the Grand Mesa team. The Grand Mesa is the highest flat top mesa in the world. It's in Grand Junction, Colorado. Little plug there. And it's the reason I call it that is because the mesa is flat on top. So it gives every member of our team the chance to help each other, guide each other, support each other, empathize with each other, to all of us fit up on top of that mesa and be up there. And we want to try to set the standard in our industry for what we do in a lot of different ways. And so that's why I call it a team. A team is a group of people that come together that want to see each other do well, and they get excited when each other does well. And that's what I'm really liking about my Vistage experience so far, being the chair, is to be able to build that team and that team concept with them, and then watch them grow and progress has been really satisfying for me.
I love that. Well, for me, it was the embodiment of, we're going to be competitive, but only with ourselves,
Yeah.
which I loved. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want, we're all non-competing industries anyways.
Right.
I want to have an atmosphere where everyone's excited when someone else does well. And that's how you grow. And that's really important. As a speaker, Amy, I'm going to go back a little bit about this. When you were a
Okay.
speaker with Vistage, was it a little intimidating for you at some point, or when you first started, maybe because you're sitting there speaking to 16 business CEOs or business leaders or business owners or presidents or vice presidents, and all of a sudden here's AmyK sitting in there speaking to them?
Oh yes. So I have fun stories. So Vistage has been a client for 23. No, I just misspoke. For 22 years, Vistage has been a client for 22. And so you can imagine a little whippersnapper, this tiny little. So I'm tiny. I weigh 110 pounds, soaking wet, and I would walk in 16 men. So when I started, there was almost no female presence at all, and I had super supportive groups, and then I had, people tell me that I was full of nonsense. Only they would use a more expletive word, and you learn. And here's the crazy thing: my confidence grew so fast because I would get people who would give me feedback, whether I wanted it or not. I would have people who would say things to tear me down. I'd have people that would say things to build me up. And again, we're going back a long time ago to when the world was just a different place. And now I think about the fact that we've got all these incredible people in Vistage. You've got 20,000 some members around the world, and we play full out. And we play at a different, we're certainly far more accepting of women. We're more inclusive and inviting of women. But you all were great training ground. It was kind of like, for instance, if we use a sports analogy, it was kind of like I left high school and I went to the big leagues. Well, the big leagues have a right to razz me, right? I'm this little whippersnapper, and they're like, let's see what you know. But what was great is all of that made me stronger, capable, smarter, and better. And I think it led to my own personal and professional growth and made it an exponential leap along the way.
So I'm somebody that is thinking, maybe I need some help. I'm a business owner. I looking at different ways to help me and my business grow. And I come to AmyK and I say, Amy, I know you've been in Vistage. I know you're a speaker for Vistage. Would you recommend Vistage for me? And if so, why?
Well, the first thing I would say is, are you open to learn? And if you're open to learn, if you're open to playing better because you care about the people that you lead, then Vistage is a really great fit. But if you're sort of like, I got nothing to learn, Vistage is not for you.
Yeah.
So if you're willing to go, by the way, if you're willing to go and support other people in their leadership journey, that's also important. Remember, it's a generous giver and receiver. It goes both ways. And so if you're looking for that camaraderie, if you're looking for a sacred and safe place to network, and I don't mean that in the like the original definition of the word, I mean like really bond and build a community with other like-minded leaders who care about the people and who want to grow in their own evolution, Vistage is going to be a gorgeous fit. It's going to be gorgeous. And that's why, it's interesting. I'll often tell somebody who's thinking about joining Vistage, like, well, I don't know. And I'll be like, well, look at it outside of the financials. And by the way, I always think you're going to get a 10x return on Vistage. I just think it's a no-brainer. You'll get a 10x ROI. But here's what we don't define ROI often. We often think it's return on investment. Yes, it's also ripple of impact. Think about it. If you got a 10x return on ripple of impact, what would that do in your life?
Yeah. Yeah. And you were talking a little bit earlier about just having a conversation. And if you miss a conversation, how much that's worth.
Yeah, so this is the world I live in. So
This is
I work with
amazing.
leaders on communication. That's my sweet spot. And whether you're having a difficult or a tough conversation around innovation or sales or performance and productivity, whether it's supply chain and logistics, or maybe you're trying to close a deal or do an acquisition, or maybe you're just trying to have a really tough conversation at home with somebody you love and navigate it successfully. What research, all the studies, whether you look at MIT, you look at University of Michigan, you look at Emory, they're all validating that the cost of not having that conversation is somewhere between $7,500 and $10,000. And that's just average, which means they can be more expensive to avoid that tough conversation. What we often don't take into consideration too, because that's the hard cost of not having it, is the emotional cost, the stress, the anxiety, the frustration, the anger, the resentment that builds up by not having these tough conversations. And Vistage helps you have them because you get together with people who will help you to have those. And then the other thing to think about too, and I find this to be an even more fascinating fact, most leaders avoid these tough conversations for 6 months to 2 years. And that's on average again.
Wow.
So if you think about the 2 or 3 tough conversations that you're avoiding right now, the hard cost financially, the emotional cost, the toll that it's taking on you, the amount of time that's gone by to get what you want, then you realize that there is a better way to play and an easier, less stressful way to play. And that's the world that I love, is really championing you, elevating your voice to have those conversations so you can, because I always joke, so Joe, my line is, and I believe it, it's not just a line, but it is a line that I use all the time when I speak. The life that you want, it's on the other side of a tough conversation. And I just truly believe that.
Wow. Yeah, no doubt. I want to dive into your leadership journey a little bit.
Yeah.
You're a teacher. Then you got into the corporate world. Then you started your own business. What shaped you most in your leadership journey? The teacher, the corporate world, owning your own business, all of it. What were some things that were kind of eye-popping moments for you, or what I call in my book, I call it the light bulb moments that really got you into this leadership journey that you're on now?
So I had the privilege when I was an elementary school teacher, I worked for what I thought was a really, really strong leader. And I'll just say Ray, but I thought Ray was a really great leader. And I had some other experiences after that, both in the international school system and the corporate world, where I witnessed some not so great leaders. And that was really eye-opening to me, that people had been promoted into what I would consider a position of gravitas and impact. And they were either downright mean, cruel, dysfunctional, wounded at a level that it was like, wow, they're leading through the wound rather than going and doing the heavy work that they need to heal that wound so that they weren't such a negative impact on others. And it was sort of that eye-opening, leaders have a tremendous responsibility to lead themselves well in order to lead others well. And that was when I decided, well, I could have a bigger impact myself if I could help leaders become better leaders. So they would then create better leaders, and that would just be this incredible ripple effect. And so that's what it jazzes me to this day, because when you are, I think C.S. Lewis said it best. C.S. Lewis wrote The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, for those of us who remember our childhood books. But he said that praise is inner health made audible. And to me, it was sort of that, yes, if you are a kind and loving and compassionate leader, it's a reflection of the kind, loving, compassionate persona inside yourself. And so again, the more that you can get comfortable in your own skin and love you for who you are and get a healthy, functional relationship with me, myself, and I, the better leader you're going to be for others. And so that has served me as a purpose for over 2 decades.
That's awesome. And I look at it like this, and I had mentioned this to you in our off-air conversation, that what got me on my journey was I read a stat that 70% of Americans are disengaged at work. Oh. And it just really made me think about 7 out of 10 people driving down the road every day are frustrated, mad, upset that they have to go to work. So one of my charges is I want to take Sunday night blues away from people. I want a Monday to feel like it's a Friday. I want them to be just as excited about going to work on Monday morning as they are Friday morning. And that's a tough challenge. I mean, that's a tough challenge, but you go into the leadership part of it, because 70% say they're disengaged at work. 85% of those 70% said it's because of the leadership they work for. And I want to go back to a point you made, yeah. the ripple effect. The ripple effect for me is I'm a leader of a company. People are disengaged. They go home mad. Now, all of a sudden, they go home and they bring that to their family. Yeah. Now their family's mad. And the ripple effect of that, not just within the organization, but the ripple effect outside the organization, into the home, into your worker's home. your employees home. I really believe that leaders have an obligation to make it an enjoyable thing so people can have an enjoyable life at work and at home.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you think about all the people that are committing to your vision, they've shown up to make your vision come true.
Right.
They've shown up to do the vision of whatever the company's mission and vision is. And then we don't take the time to accept the care and management of the people who believe in our vision. And so I think that I'll go a little woo-woo on you, but I do believe in energetic escrow. And energetic escrow to me is that ripple effect that you just talked about. So I had a miserable day at work. My boss treated me horribly. My peers, I'm just making this up, but my peers are indifferent, and we all kind of do C-level work. And then I go home and I'm already kind of ick, and I don't feel aligned with what my own calling. And I feel like, I'm working really hard, but it's not meaningful and it's certainly not pleasurable. And then we're cranky in the grocery store checkout line, or we're terse with our kids, and we're impatient. And all that to me is a reflection of the fact that you don't feel good about yourself. And the reason that you don't feel good about yourself goes way beyond just the mediocre colleague. It goes back to, am I leading a life of pleasure and purpose? Well, it's really hard to do when your own boss is making it miserable and unpurposeful for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, one of the core factors of your job description as a leader is to make sure that your people feel significantly meaningful in the role that they play, and that you're making it a pleasurable journey for them along the way. And that doesn't mean every day is rainbows and unicorns. Let's not go Pollyanna. But the realistic optimist in me says it's a leader's job to work with your people. You can't make anybody feel a certain way, but you can certainly work and co-create a future where people feel both pleasure and purpose, which I think is the definition of happiness, to say, yeah, this vision lights me up. And by the way, you're significantly meaningful, and I want it to light you up too.
Mm-hmm. Give them a reason to be there.
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time that you find your purpose when your purpose is greater than yourself.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of mission statements out there. And I see a lot of mission statements that are just hanging on a wall. And I see a lot of companies that have mission statements hanging on a wall. And I see a lot of companies that have a mission statement hanging on the wall, that's all they do.
That's right.
Is words on a wall.
I call, and I say this professionally because I know our audience, but I call them bullshit buzzwords.
There you go. There you go. I want to change the narrative of a mission statement. Mm-hmm. I think it should be called a purpose statement. And I think inside that purpose statement should be something that's greater than yourself, something that gives you a reason to come to work.
Yeah.
And as I look at how we deal with purpose, AmyK, I think purpose is everything. I think purpose is what gets us up in the morning. I think purpose is what makes us do what we do. It gives us the motivation, direction, and hope. How can a business leader produce more purpose for their people?
Find out what's purposeful for them. So this is a fun story. So there's a Vistage member in Denver who's a client of mine, and first of all, he's amazing. He's just an amazing leader. And one of the things that this gentleman said to me, and we're going back maybe 15 years now, but he said, AmyK, I am not in the business of what my business does. He says, my business will be wildly successful when I'm in the business of supporting the people. He says, that's my business, supporting the people. And he said, so I need to know every single individual person's purpose for why they work. So for instance, he says, I'm not like, let's just say you sell widgets. He's like, I'm not in the widget business. He says, I am in the managing of my people's dreams and purpose. That's what I'm in. And I said, and when they feel like what they're doing is driving their purpose, they will come to work engaged and committed for this other thing that we're doing over here. And so he says that sounds hallmarky until you actually get to know me. He's like, that's what I believe. And I did get to know him, and he's been a beautiful client for years, and he walks the talk. So he's going around saying, like, if you were a part of his team, he would say, Joe, what's driving you right now? Are you saving for your kids' college? Do you want to take your wife on vacation? Are you trying to put some money in savings for a rainy day? Are you caring for an elderly parent? Like, what's driving you right now? Well, then let's make sure that that's top of line and we're supporting those goals while we're working over here, so that we're working on your purpose while we're working on this purpose. And by the way, your role here is significantly meaningful to everybody that we're impacting. But now notice what he's done. He's taken the time to get to know you, better understand you. Now he's a witness to what's driving you. And he realizes that it's just beyond the widget. And so I think that these are all the conversations that really strong leaders are having with their people. And I know there's going to be somebody listening to this right now. Let's just call a spade a spade. Somebody's going to be listening to this and like, AmyK, that's all well and good, except that I have 15,000 employees. Okay. But the fish stinks from the head. Mm-hmm. So if you want to have this beautiful culture, how do you treat your direct reports? No, maybe you can't talk to all 15,000, but you can talk to the ones that you report to. And you can set the expectation and you can model the behaviors that you want down, and that can cascade. And you can message all of those people on a consistent basis about your belief in them and how you play as a culture and what's important to you and the communities and the causes and the charities that you believe in. You don't, oh, this is going to sound so controversial, Joe, but I'm going to say it anyway. Your culture is not putt-putt and bowling. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but that is not your culture. A summer picnic is not your culture.
And I think one of the biggest challenges that business leaders have is setting that culture, but then living in that culture.
Yeah. Practicing it.
Right. And it's
showing up every day in the practice of it.
No doubt. And when you said, well, I have 15,000 employees, great. That just gives you more of a chance.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, it's coaching. So you have 15,000 people. You have a lot of people that are in charge of those 15,000 people. How are you coaching them? How are you coaching them on your culture? How are you coaching them on how to coach their people? What if you're not living your culture on a daily basis, you are going to fail.
Okay. I got a great story. So do we have time? I know we're getting close, but do I have time for a story?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I mentioned earlier, I come from a sports family. So one of my all-time favorite stories is 1956, January 2nd, Pasadena, California. It's the Rose Bowl. And you and I, and for anybody who's listening, we know that the Rose Bowl is sort of like the Super Bowl for the collegiate level back then, right? It's all changed now. But in 1956, it was UCLA Bruins versus Michigan State Spartans. We've got 7 seconds left on the clock, and the score is tied 14-all. And Michigan State's got the ball on the 41-yard line. So we're just going to put this in context. Never been done before. So we're looking at this field goal, 41-yard line, 1956, and the quarterback for Michigan State makes a decision. He looks over at the kicker, and the kicker is like shuffling his feet nervously. And the quarterback gets it. The reason that the score is tied 14-all is that they've missed 2 kicks in that very same game. So the quarterback looks at his kicker and he makes a decision. He walks over to the sidelines. True story. He walks over to the sidelines and he motions to a sophomore named Dave Kaiser. And he says, "Kaiser, you're kicking." And Kaiser's like, "Whoa, no, wait a minute. I've never played in my entire collegiate career. Now you want me to come in the Rose Bowl with 7 seconds left on the clock? Like, that's too much pressure." And the quarterback is like, "Grab your helmet, get in the game." 90,000 fans rise in the stands. And the announcers note that Kaiser is kicking. And the fans are momentarily confused. They're like, "Who's Kaiser? Have you ever heard of Kaiser?" Nobody's heard of Kaiser, but it's too late. The players take their mark. The ball is snapped. Kaiser connects, and this ball starts flying through the air like it's in slow motion. Kaiser turns his back to the goalpost, and he's watching the ref. He's completely not aware of anything that's happening behind him. He's watching the ref, and he's watching the ref, and he's watching the ref. Finally, the ref's hands shoot up. The kick is good. The crowd goes nuts. It's like, 4 hours later, back in the locker room, Coach Dougherty approaches Kaiser, and he says, "Young man," he's like, "I got to ask you a question." He's like, "Yeah, Coach, what?" And he says, "Are you superstitious?" And Kaiser's like, "Huh?" And Coach Dougherty says, "Yeah, are you superstitious?" He's like, "Coach, I have no idea what you're talking about." And Coach Dougherty says, "You didn't watch the ball. You turned your back to the goalpost to look at the ref." He's like, "What was going on?" Well, Kaiser gets this sheepish look on his face, and he says, "Coach, I got to tell you, I left my glasses back in the hotel room. I couldn't see a thing." He's like, "I had to look at the ref." And Coach Dougherty's first reaction, and this is what I think is so phenomenal, his first reaction is he's completely pissed. right? If he'd known this kid couldn't see, he would never have let him kick this ball. But over the course of the next few days, his fury transitions to respect. Because the more that he thinks about it, he's like, you know what? This kid has shown up to practice with me every single day. This kid is this disciplined, practiced player. He knew where the angle was. He knew the distance. He understood what this was going to take. But here's what the coach said. And I think this is a beautiful lesson for all of us. He said, this kid came out, and even though he couldn't see the goalposts, even though those goalposts were fuzzy, he was a practiced, disciplined player who believed in himself. And he kicked that ball purposefully.
Yeah.
And I can't think, Joe, of a better story for how enthusiastic you are and how much you believe in purpose, that this kid came out and kicked this ball purposefully.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I think, I'm not sure when this podcast will air, but let me just say this. We're entering a time where most of us are not going to be able to see the goalposts, where the goalposts of the future are going to be a little bit fuzzy. But if we show up in the practice of being a better leader, if we show up choosing to be disciplined as a better leader, and we believe in ourselves to do that, I think we'll hit our goals right through the goalposts.
That's awesome. What a great story. What a great analogy. I have this question for you. I come to AmyK and I say to AmyK, I'm struggling as a leader with my company and I need some help. What are you going to tell me? What's a couple things that come first to your mind that you think of that you're going to help me with or tell me that I need to start with?
Well, the first thing I'm going to tell you is you can face it, because you were just self-aware enough to realize that you needed to ask for help. So you can face it. Whatever's going on, you can totally face it. And I notice what I'm not saying. You're going to be fine. I'm not going to be pedantic. I'm not going to be condescending. I don't know if you're going to be fine, but here's what I do know. You're going to face it. Whatever happens, you'll face it. And then by your asking for help, there's a lot of ways to do it. You can join a Vistage group. You can hire a coach. You can get your chair to coach. You can invest in your sales team. You can invest in communication training. You can take the time to do a self-assessment to say, who am I up to being, or who do I need to become to lead this in a new and better direction? And again, answering that bigger, better, bolder question of who you need to become will set you on the right trajectory.
Oh, great. And now I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, AmyK.
Oh, not that you haven't already.
I know. Top 3, maybe I shouldn't use the word top.
Okay.
3 important things for a leader or a purposeful leader to have.
To have?
For me, it's 1 is empathy.
Oh, okay. Okay. So like character
2
traits.
is listening.
The character traits. Okay.
Yeah. And 3 is helping, have that servant's heart.
Well, I think you nailed some of them right there. So I'm a big believer in leading with love. And that was pretty woo-woo back in the 1970s, but I emphatically believe that you lead with love, which is you show up as a witness to people so they feel more seen, heard, and understood. And when you choose to lead with love, it changes the way that you play. It really does.
Yeah, yeah.
An open heart and an open mind. I really believe in intellectual curiosity and being intrigued. So rather than being judgy, I'd rather you be curious.
Well, awesome.
And then the third, there's so many. Where do I want to go from there? I would say no to the nonsense. I think, you and I were talking about this offline before. There's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of people, including myself. If what I say today doesn't resonate with you, move on, because you've got to go with what's true to your heart, what's true to your calling. And there is so much noise out there and so much nonsense. I think one of my favorite phrases as an adult is "not me circus, not me monkeys." And I have to say it with that accent because that's who I got it from. So, but really and truly, when you start looking at the world and choosing what you want to believe and where you want to spend your time and what you want to feed yourself and your people, I come back to "not me circus, not me monkeys." and I keep going with what I want to do.
That's awesome. And I want to go back to something you said too. You said something like, this is not every day's rainbows and cookies and unicorns. And I want people to understand that what we're talking about here with leadership and leading from the heart and leading with love is not what we're saying is it's not always so touchy-feely. I've had to have many heart-to-heart conversations with people that I have led, and it's for their own good.
Tough love.
Yeah. And I always tell them this: I'm going to be as honest with you as I can be, because you deserve that from me. You are lacking in these areas. And then I follow it up with, and here's how we're going to coach you to get better at that.
Yeah.
So I want people to understand that. I also think that I have a thing. I'm not a big proponent of a performance review. I think when I say, AmyK, tomorrow morning, you're coming in, we're having our annual performance review. What does that give you?
The willies.
Yeah. It gives you anxiety. It gives you stress. It gives you all that. So I prefer to call it, AmyK, tomorrow you're coming in for your annual growth review.
Well, here's where I'm going to challenge all of that. Anytime that conversation is taking place, it should just be a summary of what I already know, because you're giving me feedback in real time. So if we continue the sports analogy, nobody wants to find out in December that they dropped the ball in February.
Yeah.
And so for me, let's just say you're my coach, you're my leader. We should be meeting so consistently that anything that you're telling me is real-time feedback, so that when we sit down for an annual performance review, it's a summary of what you and I both already know. Nobody should be blindsided in a review. And nobody should be waiting more than 6 weeks to get feedback. In fact, it should be less than that, but I get it. The other thing that I think that's really important to say is that a performance review is something that you should be having as a normal conversation with your direct reports on a regular basis. And I'll say that, I said lead with love. Tough love is still love. And you can say what you mean without being mean. So do we have enough platitudes there? But I'm serious about them. Tough love is still love. And having high expectations of people is a really good thing to have, because they'll feel better about themselves when they meet it. But you don't have to say what you mean and be mean about it.
Right.
You can just say that the cost of you not having this skill is a disservice to yourself. It's a disservice to the team. So let's get you shored up so that you can play full out.
And let's coach them.
That's a thoughtful conversation.
Yeah. And I totally agree. You hit some nails on the head right there. You got me all fired up now.
Yay!
The expectation part. I used to tell people when I coach them, I have this expectation for you. I have a high expectation for you. If you want me to lower it, I'm not going to, because that's a disservice to you.
Yeah.
And I tell leaders that I work with now all the time, high expectations give your people confidence, because they need to know that you have high expectations for them because you believe that they can do it. If you lower the expectations, you're telling them, you just can't do this. You're not good enough. So I have to lower these so you can make it.
There's a great analogy. One time years ago, I heard an interview with Sarah Blakely, who's the founder of Spanx. And she was saying, I don't know, she did some reality TV show. I don't watch that stuff, so I don't know what show she was on, but she did some reality TV show. And so in the interview, the interviewer asked her, you were one of the only people to jump and grab this rope. Everybody else missed the rope. And they were like, what was your strategy? Because you were the only one that got it. Or maybe she was one of a few who got it. And she said, I aimed 4 feet higher. She's like, in my mind, I was grabbing the rope up there so that by the time that I caught it right at the end, I was successful. And really, that was the perfect analogy of saying, if you set really high expectations, and maybe you don't always make them, at least you're coming in at a level of excellence that's still higher than everybody else with low expectations who don't even meet those. And I just think that was always just a great analogy that stuck in my mind, is aim higher and you'll still have a level of excellence.
It's a great analogy. And I tell people all the time, it's about the process of getting there. If I have a business owner that says, I want to get to 5 million in revenue in 5 years.
Yeah.
And I say, well, that's great. I love the goal.
Mm-hmm.
My next question and most important question is, what is your process in getting there? And my job as your coach and my job as your Vistage chair, basically, is to make sure and hold you accountable to that process.
Yeah.
Because my goal is for you to win the process. And if you get to 4,999,000 and you don't quite reach your 5 million goal, we can still look and say, we did everything in the process, we won the process, and we're not going to have regret. We won't have regret. If we don't follow the process and we're not working the process and staying with the process and we don't get it, now we have, not only did we not get to the goal, but now we have regret because we didn't win the process to try to get to the goal.
You know, it's interesting. I'm just going to be a huge preaching to the choir right now. So we run iconic inner circles for sales leaders. And one of the things that I always tell our sales leaders is they're just 6-month programs that we put sales teams through. And I always say to the sales leader, who do you need to be to reach or exceed this goal? Because if you focus on the number and just the number, you'll never reach it. But as you just so brilliantly said, when we focus on who you're up to being, who do you need to become to lead into this, let's say, $5 million goal? What does your team need to do to lead into this 5? Like, what are all the things that we want them to do along the way? You're not only going to meet it, you're going to exceed it. And our participants prove that over and over again. But if you just sit around and say, I want that 5 million, and what are you doing? And we're going to talk numbers all the time, you won't reach it.
Yeah.
But the minute that you build a whole infrastructure about how we want to play, what we want to be in the practice of. In fact, I had one gentleman years ago, he was like, I had all these KPIs, key performance indicators, and my largest, my biggest contributing players doesn't meet half of them. And now I realize why it's toxic and why the other people aren't working well with him. And it's like, yeah, you got to find the right things to measure, the right things to put into process. Mm-hmm. And then you have to ask yourself, and then what do I stand for? So it goes right back to that mission and vision. If we go full circle on the wall, if you're in your purpose and you feel that it's significantly meaningful and everything that you're doing along the way feels significantly meaningful, and most of the time it's pleasurable, you're going to knock your goals out of the park.
Yep, no doubt. And I have a saying that says, win the process. And I have another one that says, fear regret. It's my job as the leader. It's my job as a leader of a Vistage group to make sure and try to help my people not have regret.
I love that.
So I got to hold them accountable. I got to challenge them because I believe they could reach anything that they tell me. I really do with my people in my Vistage group. I believe that. And I believe that with my players when I was a coach in athletics. It's my job to coach them there, to challenge them there, to have high expectations to help them there. The biggest job I have is to make sure that they have no regret when it's all done.
I love that.
And that's really what I love doing, what I love doing now with my being a Vistage chair. I get to work with people in their businesses, something that means something not only to them, but every employee that works for them, every employee's family that works for them. And holding these people to high expectations and challenging them is really what gives me the great joy and satisfaction after watching them grow and progress.
Oh, I love that. Can we end on that? That's a beautiful note. That's a beautiful note.
We can't end on it, but I have to end on this.
Okay.
Okay. And this will be the last 3 questions and they'll be quick.
Oh, no, this is good. I was like, oh, it's just so beautiful.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but I have to end on this because I do it on every podcast. My book is called The 3 Ps, Finding Your Purpose, Perspective, and Passion. So I ask every guest on my podcast those 3 questions. What is your purpose in life?
To ignite the brilliance in you.
Oh, wow. Love that. I skip over perspective and go to passion. What's your passion in life?
Teaching, lighting others up.
Okay. So serving people.
Yep.
So I'm gonna say this, that your purpose and your passion equal each other. Purpose equals passion, passion equals purpose. What holds it together, the glue that holds those two together and keeps you in there, is your perspective on life. What is your perspective on life?
Well, this is probably a byproduct of my upbringing, but I really do believe that we're here to serve. And our soul, SOUL purpose is, how do we contribute to make it easier for everybody else?
Wow. AmyK, you're amazing.
No,
No, you are.
Privileged to be here. Thank you.
This has been awesome. I appreciate it. We've talked Vistage groups, we've talked leadership, we've talked your purpose, we've talked a whole bunch of different things that hopefully people can get inspired by and take in and use in their life. And just so excited that you came on. I will say this, or ask this: how can people get a hold of you if they want to get a hold of you and get some more AmyK-isms in them?
Oh, you're very kind to offer. So 2 ways, super easy. One is to go to my website, amyk.com. So just amyk.com. We have lots of free resources and tools. You can join our community. I give free stuff out every week if you join our community in terms of blogs and information and tools. And if you're a woman leader, you can also go to shegetsit.com, shegetsit.com. We have tremendous resources over there. You can send somebody to our iconic inner circle for sales training. I do keynotes, I coach, but all of it is around self-leadership and communication.
Love it. And I will say this: I need to get some women in my Vistage group.
Yeah.
I need that perspective. AmyK, thanks again. And everyone out there, thank you so much for listening to the People Progressing podcast. Please share this with friends. They can get so much out of this as well. Please download it, subscribe, do whatever you need to do so we can keep growing this and keep people progressing. AmyK, thank you so much. And everyone out there, have a great day, and always, always, always keep progressing. Thank you.
The values that I've found is I'm a smaller company, haven't been around that long, and I've been able to incorporate some things that a lot of bigger companies are able to do, some processes, financials, things like that, and really been able to kind of expand what I'm looking to do in the future.
So in terms of the value that I've gotten from Vistage is in areas that I would say were surprising. One, I think the speakers that we have to our group have been very valuable, very insightful, and have given me things that I can bring back to my business and share with others, the following day. The other thing, I think the speakers and presentations that the national organization hosts on a monthly basis are excellent and are resources that my organization just could not, one, afford, but can glean information from and help us frame the future and decisions that we're making now and or into the future. And then in terms of the time commitment, I literally just put it on my calendar for the entire year, and I block that time. That's time that I think is valuable to invest in, and I build things around it because it's protected time on my calendar. I block off the whole day, and therefore people know that I'm out that day, and tomorrow I'm probably going to come back with questions and projects and things for them to start digging into.
Values that I've gotten out of Vistage, Joe. One, I think the guest speakers that we have are very good. They give you a unique perspective to help take back to your organization, to look at things differently from a different mindset. And I think that brings a tremendous amount of value when you're looking at what you're doing today versus where you want to be tomorrow. You can look at what those guest speakers have talked on about what you could do differently, what you could do to tweak things, just on how you have conversations with your team, to maybe change your approach a bit, to have a conversation about what we need to do differently, which may be part of the plan, but it helps you have better dialogue with your team on how to present we need to make a change, or ask what kind of change needs to be made, or how to solicit input from your organization, just to have a better understanding of what's going on and where we need to go. That's one component. The other component is that being able to meet on a monthly basis, not only for one-on-ones, but with the team in Vistage, is being able to hear other peers of what they go through, which a lot of times their challenges are not much different than what I face on a daily basis or on a monthly basis. But it's, we all think we've got something unique, and as much as we think that we're unique unto ourselves, we're not necessarily that unique. We have, of course, nuances with everything, but being able to have those conversations with the peer group in Vistage allows a different perspective on how they've dealt with something that's very similar that you've got to deal with on a daily basis at your own business. And so I think those two things have been my greatest value and takeaway from being in Vistage is having the guest speakers and their perspective, as well as the peer group and how they view things going on within their organization and how they approach it. And when I relate it to what I have to do on a daily basis, being able to see a different lens potentially from a peer in the group, how that might be different or approached differently, or what kind of outcomes can be expected. It has really helped me take a couple steps back in looking at the landscape differently before I move forward on something.
The value I have gained from becoming a Vistage member through the coaching and peer consulting has been far beyond what has been expected. I have gained a lot of business contacts through the network and has been a great return on investment.
The value that I've found in the one-to-ones is it allows me the ability to sit down with Joe every month, and he's able to keep me accountable on things that we've talked about. He's able to bounce ideas off of me and get an outside perspective on potentially things that I wouldn't have thought of otherwise.
One-to-ones. I've gotten a lot out of the one-to-ones because during the conversations that I have with Joe, one, they've been great conversations, but being able to share back and forth experiences of things and having someone look into what I'm dealing with on a daily basis, on a one-on-one basis, is helpful. So I can be able to bounce things off of Joe. He can see what's going on in my world and ask me what's going on, and then can offer a perspective or an opportunity to think of things or look at things in a different basis. And it's nice having the one-on-ones to be able to share that time and make me, whether I do something that we talked about or not, it's given me an option of being able to think things through differently before taking some action. So I've really appreciated that.
I'd say some of the values that I get from the one-to-ones are I'm able to talk to somebody who knows about our business but isn't in our business, and so can talk to Joe at a very high level about some of the issues that we're having day to day, talk to some of the things that are on my mind that others in the organization may not need to know about, or get deeper into those subjects and get input and advice on ideas and options to consider from someone who is not in the day-to-day throngs of the business.
Thank you so much for joining us today on our LinkedIn Live event, telling you a little bit about our Vistage group and what we do. I don't call it a group, I call it a team, because we're building a team of leaders that care about each other, respect each other, empathize with each other, and want to help each other get to the top. So I'd love to talk to you more about it. You can contact me at joe.white@vistagechair.com, and you can get on my website, check things out at vistage.com. We have nothing to hide. It's a win-win situation for everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope to hear from you soon.